There was two hands from later on that gave me some trouble. One, which was really annoying. And then the second one, I don't know, like I don't play a ton of tournaments at these types of... It's interesting because what I found with the main event is you arrive on certain flops sometimes with a lot of... It's not necessarily weird stack depths. It's just if you don't play a lot of tournaments, it's not one that you've taken like a ton of reps with in given scenarios. So let's take a look here. So, and we will... Oh, actually, you know what? I meant to look at one thing here too. I'll just give you a little bit of backstory here on this particular first hand that we're going to take a look at, which was a hand that I was sitting at I just got moved from Paris over to Horseshoe at the end of day 2. So this is at the end of day 2. I think I ended up playing over here like maybe for a couple of levels, and there was a Euro that busted. I actually busted a Euro. And then another Euro came in, and at the time he had like right around the same amount of chips that I had, but then he won a couple of pots, and he played this hand against Ryan Depaulo. Maybe Ryan Depaulo will sort of jump in here and make a comment or something like this, but he won this huge hand versus Ryan Depaulo, and then we played a hand in level 10. So this is at level 10, which was 1,000, 2,000 with a 1K big blind ante. And this hand was played at 120,000 effective. He had like 200,000, but Hero has 120,000. Now, to give you a little bit of backstory here, the hand against Ryan Depaulo was a really interesting one because I talked to Ryan Depaulo about it after the fact. Basically, what ended up happening, and I think I have the action right, was that Depaulo and him were both at maybe like 150,000 effective at like 1K, 2K. This new Euro might have been a little bit more, so they're deep, right? And Depaulo opens from early to mid position, and this Euro 3-bets out of the small blind, and Depaulo defends, okay? And the board comes out, I think it was Ace Queen X, like Ace Queen 4, Rainbow with 1 club, which is going to come into play. So the Euro had 3-bet out of the small blind. Depaulo defends. It comes out Ace Queen 4. Euro C-bets the flop, I think pretty large. Depaulo calls. Turn, I believe, was the 10 of clubs. So it's Ace Queen like 4, 10 with a backdoor flush draw out there. And the ace is not a club because that's going to come into play. And the guy just bombs it again, and Depaulo calls again. And then the river is like just a brick, like a 7, right? So I'll just like write this for the live stream, guys, and then we didn't necessarily like graphically represent the backstory here, but it was Ace Queen 4, 10 club. River was like a 6 or some bullshit like that, right? And the guy moves all in. So it was raise, 3-bet, call, bet flop, Ace Queen 4, call, bet real big on the turn, call, jam all in on the river. And Depaulo thinks about it for a while and then folds. And it costs Depaulo maybe half his stack, 2/3 of his stack. And later, I asked Ryan, I'm like, what did you have there? Like Ace Jack or something? And he said he had Ace Deuce of clubs. So he peeled 3-bet and then picked up the backdoor flush draw on the turn and then folded the river. So this is a little bit of a backstory. Like this guy is just like going, he's moving and shaking like a lot, being like super, super fucking aggressive, right? So we get to this hand, and like I said, it's maybe like 20 minutes left. 20 minutes left in day 2 in level 10. 1K, 2K, blinds, Hero with 120,000. And pre-flop, Euro opens UTG to 4,000. Hero has Ace of Diamonds, Ace of Hearts in mid position and goes to 14,000, which was a slightly larger than some of the 3-bets that I had made, but I just felt like he was just going to be defending, and I wanted to get as much value as possible. So he calls. So UTG calls, and we're heads up. So 28,000 right there, plus the 1K, 2K with the 2K ante. The pot's like 33K. Okay, we started the hand with like 120, so we've got like 106 behind, right? The flop comes out, Jack of hearts, 9 of hearts, 8 of hearts. Hero has red aces as a 3-bet pre. Jack, 9, 8. And now he checks. So this is right away where if you're like doing these types of reps all the time, you might have like a solution in your head how to play this particular situation in a spot where you're like, whatever, start the hand with like 60 big blinds, like in a 3-bet pot. Now I was really, really torn here, and I was very, very close. And I was like, well, if I bet here, this is just going to be a bet, get it in, right? For the most part, I would assume. I've got aces with the ace of hearts here. But if I check it back, I can sort of make it look like maybe I'm pot controlling something or I've missed. I think in a situation here where I did not have aces, I did not have aces with the ace of hearts in terms of stack protection and just sort of waiting to see a card to see how the equities shift. I think aces without a heart here in this particular configuration is a lot more of a check back in a 3-bet pot than with a heart, right? I think we can all acknowledge that. But I still thought that I could check this back some of the time. And obviously, I sort of have the board in a pretty good situation. I think maybe when you look back at this, though, there still are quite a few scare cards that can come out, not only just for me, but for just getting value. A bunch of one-liners to straights, right? And also, obviously, another heart. So he checks, under the gun checks, and hero checks it back. Whether that's heresy or what, I check it back. So we remain at 33,000. Okay. Turn is the 6 of diamonds. Okay. Jack 9, 8. By the way, too, like obviously a board of like Jack 10, 9 probably is going to be checked back more than, Jack 9, 8. LA Banks said I'd c-bet 14. The other thing that I was thinking about here too is that if I were to c-bet even small, let's say like I c-bet the flop of like 10 and then he went to, 35, there's really no reason for me to just jam there, right? It's just a call and a call, maybe on non-straight turns. It was something that I thought about. Like, it's not just like, oh, I'm going to just rip it back. Like, what would be the point of ripping it back? Unless like I thought that like King Jack with like the King of Hearts was going to call. So, and I've been in situations like that in tournaments before where I'm like, all right, I'm just call. And then you just get this ridiculous run out and then you're handcuffed. Just thinking back like in my head. But like I said, I checked it back on Jack 9, 8, 3 hearts. Turns the 6 of diamonds. And I was like, okay. And now under the gun bets 12,000. Okay. I was like, this is great. Because I'm going to call here. And then like if the river's a brick and he checks, I'm going to fucking blast it at him. And it's going to make it look like I'm going to have like a high heart, right? Or something like that, right? Now, what I'll say, and I don't think there really is anything for me to do but call as played, so hero calls. But what I want you to take a look at here, as now the pot is 47,000, and we have put in like 26, so I have like 95-ish or so left, about two pot-sized bets left. Now, what I will say here is that look at the amount of sort of dirty, unclean cards that can come here at the end. And I'm not just talking about hearts here. A queen, a 10, a 7 here, and also now a 5 somehow, which would put a one-liner out there to a 7 here. So queen, 10, 7, and 5. That's 4 cards. I'm not going to count the hearts, so that's 12 non-heart sort of like one-liner. 12 cards that I cannot get value from where I'm going to check back at the end, right? So that's right there, 12. And then if you add all the hearts in there too, that's 16 cards. So more than 1/3 the deck. And then also too, you've got cards like possibly like top pair pairing, like a jack, middle pair pairing, maybe not so much an 8, right? So that's like another 6 cards right there. It's like now we're up to like 22 cards. And then maybe even like a king, right? Like if he checks a king, like is it a little bit thin to go there for value? I think I still bet there. Aces with the ace, although then what happens when you get jammed on, right? Now you're in a quandary. But I mean, it's like over half the deck. But like I said, like as played, I think the question here really is whether you just bet the flop or not. But I was really hoping, for some sort of brick, something like that. So now the pot's 47,000. Well, the river is not a brick. It is the queen of spades. And I'm like, okay, well, obviously if he checks, I'm going to check it back, right? So the board is jack 9-8, all hearts, turns a 6, river's a queen. And now he uses some Euro sizing. Now remember, I only have like 95,000 left. Under the gun bets 70,000. 70,000 at the end here into 47 with a one-liner out there to a 10. And I'm looking at my stack and I'm like, well, I've got 95 here. If I call and I lose, that would leave me with 25,000. The blinds are 1K, 2K. We only have like a couple, like a round more at this level. And if I come back with like, 20 to 25K, that's going to be 10 big blinds there for day 3. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, what hand? And I was like, I think what kind of, where I came to the conclusion here is that even if he were to have some sort of small pair that bets turn here, I probably have enough like ace king in this particular configuration that he doesn't need to start turning a bunch of hands here into bluffs, right? If he can beat ace king. So now, and that's when I came. I mean, it's obviously a very, very polarizing sort of river bet, and it was interesting because it's like, wow. I mean, does this start to be just flushes or nothing? And because I've got the ace of hearts in my hand, what flushes does he have, right? I mean, look at this distribution of the cards. It's jack 9-8 all hearts, right? I mean, what flushes are left? King queen of hearts, king 10 of hearts, right? And queen 10 of hearts for like a straight flush. If he was playing some of the bottom end suited, I don't know, like 6-7 of hearts or something like that, right? I mean, the fact that I have the ace of hearts cuts down on a shit ton of the flushes, right? And I don't know how often he's playing an offsuit ace, but I've got the ace of hearts. He doesn't need to turn that into bluff. And I was just like, wow, this is fucking crazy. I just felt like I didn't know he doesn't need to turn like just air here into a bluff. And even if he had like pocket threes here, right? I have enough ace king where I don't know if he needs to turn that into a bluff. Like if I check back like ace king here, you know what I mean? Like it might even be more efficient to like pick off a bluff with one of those small pairs or check and evaluate. So I think I ended up, you block a lot of the bluffs and a lot of flushes, Matt Blow said. With those considerations and the fact that this is obviously the difference between a cash game and a tournament. If I call and I'm wrong, like it's a lot, it just cripples me to death. I folded. So hero folds. And I never knew what he had. I think the question that I have here is the flop, should I be betting the flop if I get check raise small because it's a tournament? Is ever just a jam or you just call? So say I bet the flop and I went call, right? So you check raise call, turn. So say I went like 10 and he made it like 35 and I called. So now, the pot would have been 103 and now we've got like 65,000. It's just a call, right? Or a call and a jam on the turn, I assume. Especially if we got that turn. If I call the flop, check raise, if I went 10 and he made it 35 and I called, I mean, the only things that I would ever, I guess, sometimes start to consider ever folding off if one-liners were to come in. But even still, with aces, with the ace of hearts, definitely if it's a 6 of diamonds. So I think if I were to bet the flop and he check raise, then it's just call, as opposed to like jam, right? So I folded, and then I ended up getting, so then I ended up with 87,000 off of that particular level. And I think most people agree with me here. C-bet 25% call if raised IMO, Matt Blow says. Yeah. I don't think I can find a call here with the 70,000. But I mean, I say Euro sizing, me like tough sizing. Like you have to have this right type of player here to use this type of sizing. But I mean, does 10x here take this sizing? It's just, I guess it would be, I guess it could a lot. It's just kind of bizarre. I don't know if he was ever leveraging, his stack size, but it was a tough one. And then the next one was just a pre-flop situation. And with what ended up happening in the tournament, I wonder if looking back, like with sort of, looking back in time, with what ended up happening, I wonder if I could have just, if I would have just gone with it. So in this one, we're at level 12. Oh, by the way, I'm going to bring up the guy's name just in case it gets back to the guy, because I'd like to know what he has. So 1,500, 3,000, level day 3, and I've got 120,000 effective, so 40 blinds. Okay, so 40 blinds. This guy, I think, started the hand with maybe 300,000. Villain has 300,000. And his name was, I had it here a second ago, Brandon Lee, who was in seed 8 at my table from, so if you look at like the reports, the end of the chip count reports after day 2, he was player 1682. I was 1679. Brandon Lee from Atlanta, Georgia. And why does it say that? Actually, you know what? Was it? No, it was him. Yeah, he started with 305,000 for the day. And I had started with 87,000. He didn't cash though, by the way. So this is interesting here too. So this is a pre-flop one. So pre-flop, we're at 1,500, 3K, and UTG opens to 6,500. Hero in MP1 has Jack and 3 bets to 18,000. So 6,500 to 18,000 folds back to UTG. Who jams? Now again, I started this hand with, get it up there. Okay, so this is the whole hand. 1,500, 3,000, 125K effective. Under the gun is 6,500. I go with Jack to 18,000. He folds back to him, and he just jams. Now, I had played pretty nitty. I have to say I had played pretty nitty. So, like, it definitely didn't appear like I'm doing a whole lot of 3-betting light from UTG. Now, on the surface, this looks like a ton of ace-king, right? And how would I do the math here? Because you're supposed to take, you look at the pot odds in these types of situations. Now, I will say that there's some ICM considerations here as well, because at this point, probably the biggest, besides getting to the final table in terms of like the big tournament ICM situations, is actually cashing, right? Going from 0 to 15,000. We were, they had 10,000 entries. At this time, there might have been 2,300 people left. I mean, we still had to get through a couple of levels, right? And they cashed the top 15%. But if I were to look at this particular hand and just a very, very dirty type of situation, well, first I'd want to figure out my pot odds, right? Whether you want to look at it like blinds or whatever. I mean, there's 7,500 in dead money out there. I go to 18,000. He jams for he basically jams for 120. So we have 18 in from me and him. That's 36,000. 7,500. There's 43.5 in there. And then he's jamming on top of my 18 for another 102. What did I say? I said 75. Yeah, 43. 18 and 18 is 36. 43.5. And he's jamming for another 102. So 145, 102 for me to call, I think is what I'm getting here. 145 in the pot, 102 for me to call. So about 1.5 to 1, right? Actually slightly under. So I need about 40%. So I'm doing that in my head, and I'm like, well, let's just make this easy here and say that, and then we can adjust it. And this is probably like one of the tighter things. Let's just say that he's got combinations of over pairs here that are equal to combinations of ace king. Even though I do think this is a lot of ace king, let's say that he's got like, let's say he does this with all ace king, so it's like 16 combos. And then he does it like with queens, kings, and aces 16% of the time out of, or 16 combos. Like he does it like with all the, he does it with all the, 16 out of 18. It's obviously debatable, right? Whether he does it, but I'm just trying to say, like in a situation, just to make it very, very even. This is what I would do in my head, and then we'll make the adjustment. And I would be like, oh, I'm 45%, right? I'm 55% against ace king on average, right? Ace king off and ace king suited. And then I'm like 18% against higher pairs. So 55 plus 18 is 73. That's 36.5%, right? Equity averaged. If it was like an equal combo, right? Now the question is that does he do it that much, like just as a jam with that? Let's say he just jams always queens. That's 6 combos, right? And he jams it 3 times with kings or something, like, that's 9 combos. And then he does it with ace king. Let's say that there is maybe, if there's 2 times ace king versus higher pairs, remember now we're at 55. So then the average would go 55, 55, 18, which is what, 128 divided by 3, right? 55 is 110 plus 18 is 128 divided by 3 is like 40, 43%. So it's really fucking close, right? I haven't even looked at the comments. Obviously, if it's a later type of configuration, anything that's later, then I'm going to get jacks in here. Now, if it was queens I call, I ended up folding the hand. I never knew what he had. I think he can have queens here a bunch, and he can have ace king. Now, it's interesting because if he's got queens, just queens and ace king, and let's say that well, we can still do the average out, right? Let's say he's got 12 of the 16 combos of ace king, and then all 6 combos of queens. Again, it's the same thing. I'm at 55 plus 18, 128 divided by 3 is like 40, 42, 43, and I need 40. It's really close. But then you sort of, I just thought that I was playing like nitty enough where that probably wasn't the case. People go, what about ace queen suited? I don't think that those are really all that possible. Now, what ended up happening was that I just sort of kind of bled down, and then I ran ace king into aces, and that was it. So if I were to transport myself back in time, I probably would have taken that and been at either 0 or up to like 250,000. Now let me read some of the comments here. You don't think he does this with 8-8 plus? Come on, Steve W. I don't think he does this with 10-10. He opened from under the gun. We're at 40 blinds. That's pretty deep for a tournament. I 3-bet. No, I don't think he's just jamming 10-10 here. What's interesting was that I wondered what I would do with ace king, because you're supposed to live and die by ace king here a lot, but it's just like, because if you have ace king and then he's never doing this really with ace queen, then you have a chop scenario a lot and you're behind. The question is, how often does he have like these other pairs, right? Jacks, queen. Let's say he doesn't do it much with like kings or aces, but like now you're 45% against queens. It's you gotta live and die by ace king here some of the time too. In total, you're a best 40%. This is a call without ICM implications, but it's cusp spot without ICM. So fold with ICM. Stephen Costa says, yeah, but we weren't really that close to the bubble. We still had probably 2 levels. But the slowness of the structure, right? 40 BBs, Jack can rip here. Jack plus ace king is a 3-bet call under 45 bigs without ICM. UTG versus MP. Is that UTG versus MP? I can sort of get on board with that. I can buy that. So there isn't there. I think the consensus is it's close, right? And then obviously you look at like, strength of your table. I thought I had a pretty good table for day 3. I mean, there weren't any fish, but I would say that there were definitely several people like that didn't have a lot of experience per se. And then there was one guy that started slotting in, which was in a really great situation where he was opening to like 2.5 to 3x to my immediate right, and he seemed like he was opening a lot. And the great thing about that was that I reshipped on him twice, once with like Jack 10 suited off of like 22 bigs. And there was another hand where I jammed on him with 9s, and I was like, okay, this guy is opening to this amount where like if I can get these jams through, and no one really had a lot of chips. That was the interesting thing about my table. It wasn't like somebody was like making light calls. Everyone was sort of like in the range of, no one had like more than 70 blinds. So, if it goes open and I'm shoving 25 blinds, that's going to be a huge chunk of someone's stack. And that's ended up how it went out, where the same guy opened after I actually had jammed on him with Jack 10 suited, but he opened. I had 24 blinds, and from the cutoff, I just jammed with ace king off, and then the button woke up with aces. And that was it. I was out. It was unfortunate because besides day 1, I tended to have but day 2 and day 3 were decent table draws. But yeah, I would like to know. I mean, not that it matters, like from a results-oriented standpoint, but Brandon Lee, who came into day 2 with 305,000, who they list from Atlanta, Georgia, 1682, that was at my table for day 3. It could be interesting to know what he had.